Computer programs manipulate data such as numbers and characters. In Python, we use variables to store such data. In this video, we look at the fundamental concept of variables. Programs need to store and manipulate data to carry out the necessary computations. Consider, for example, the algorithm for the failed parameter problem. The third step in this algorithm, which calculates the failed parameter, requires data items from the first two steps. So from the first step, we require the width of the field. From the first step, we require the length of the field, and from the second step, we require the width of the field. Similarly, in order to display the value of the parameter, we require data items from the third step. So the third step supplies to the fourth step the value of the parameter. And to carry out such data around your program, you need to use variables. So variables are basically names which can be assigned values. You can think of variables as containers of data. So think of a variable as a box which can hold some piece of data. So for example, I can have a box to store the name of some person. Let's say that that person is named Joe, and the name of this box can be called name. Similarly, I can have a box which holds some number, for example 24, and let's say that this 24 represents the number of students in some class or some group. The name of this box is what we call the name of the variable, and the data inside this box is the value of the variable. And to do this in Python, what you do, you use the following statements. You say name equal to the string Joe. And this is called an assignment statement, and we will see the assignment statement in the next slide. Similarly, if you want to create a container which is called num of students and hold the value 24, you say num of students equal 24. You can create variables in Python using the assignment statement, which has the following syntax: variable name equal expression. And in the assignment statement, this equal sign is called the assignment operator. We will talk about expressions in more details later on in this lecture. However, an expression can be something as simple as a single value, for example, the value 24, or the string Joe, or it can be something that is a sequence of operators and values, for example, 24 plus 3, or 17 divided by 2 plus 1, and so on. And the variable name is basically the name of the container where you want to store things. So this is basically the name of your variables. And one example that we have seen in the previous slides, so we said that if you want to create a variable named name and you store the value Joe in it, so this is basically your variable name, and your expression in this case is basically a string literal. So the string is basically here representing, or your expression is in this case is a single string literal. To create variables in Python, you need to follow the rules for naming identifiers, and there are 3 rules. The first one is that your variable cannot be a keyword, such as if or for. So for example, if you try to do the following in Python, if you try to say if equal to, Python will complain with a syntax error, because if cannot be used as a variable name. The second rule is that your variable has to start with either a letter or an underscore. So the variable 2 times, so if you say 2 times equal something, again Python will complain with a syntax error because 2 cannot be used as in the beginning of a variable name. And then the last rule is that the rest of your characters must be either letters, numbers, or underscores. So they must be either letters or underscores. So for example, you cannot have a variable name which is called times with a dot 2. So again, this is not possible in Python because this dot in here cannot be used in a variable name. So it has to be letters, numbers, or underscores. Python has in total 35 keywords, and this is basically the this is all the list of keywords in Python 3.7. so that's specifically Python 3.7. The list might change for Python 3.8 and 3.9, or there might be some new keywords that might have been added. However, in Python 3.7 has a total of 35 keywords. None of these keywords can be used as variable names. So we have seen in the previous slide an example of if, and we have also seen an example of for, which is somewhere here. So that's for. Okay. So these are not allowed to be used as variable names in Python. So let's look at an example of naming variables in Python. So here are an example of valid variable names. So if you look at the first variable here, this is a valid variable name. So in terms of, it's not a keyword, so basically it checks with the first rule. It starts with a letter, it doesn't start with a number, so it starts with a letter, so that's fine, starting with a letter. And if you look at the rest of the characters, they are letters, and you have an underscore in here, and letters and underscores are okay. So this is basically a valid variable name. This is again a valid variable name. It's not a keyword, and it starts with an underscore, and the remaining characters are letters and underscores. So again, that's a valid variable names. Here are examples of invalid variable names. So this is an invalid variable name because it starts with a dot. So remember that a variable name must start with either a letter, so something like S, A, or let's say capital B, and it should or so either letters or an underscore. But this one starts with a dot, so that's why it is an invalid variable name. This is actually not a valid variable name because you cannot have spaces in the middle. So your variable name is a single word. So make sure that your variable name is a single word. Now each one of these can be considered individually as a variable name. So if I have a variable name which is called file, and that's assigned something, that's okay. But both together as a single variable name, so I cannot say file handle equal something. This is invalid. And if you have two words and you want to join them together, you can just use an underscore, and that would be a perfectly valid variable name.